السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أد الأمانة إلى من ائتمنك ولا تخن من خانك, that you should fulfill the trust of the one who entrusts you and do not betray the one who betrays you.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salam Radio.
Indeed, this is Salam Radio, and welcome to Community Matters, the radio show for all communities across Peterborough and beyond. With me, Adrian Holstock. Community Matters asks questions that matter to our community life. As always, there are many topics and issues to discuss, and we have another couple of great guests joining me this evening. My first guest is Josie Stone, Programme Director at Peterborough Presents. Welcome, Josie.
Hello.
Hi. Now, our main topic is the Millfield Link, but I'd love to ask you first about Peterborough Presents, and what is it and how is it different from Vivacity?
Well, we are an arts programme and we're hosted by Vivacity, but it's a consortium of lots of different organisations in the city coming together and working on a programme that aims to involve more people in the arts and maybe people who don't normally participate in the arts. So along with Vivacity, you have Metal, you have Eastern Angles, you have Neem Park Trust, PCVS, the Diwali Association, so lots of different organisations, and both guiding and learning from a programme that aims to work in the community with people to develop projects that they want to participate in.
I remember when I was at school and we used to have art classes, and I would always think that was the worst possible class because I could say I can't draw and I can't paint and I can't do art. So how do you get people involved in art?
Well, we still hear that a lot, and we often don't talk to people about art. What we talk to people about is, what are you interested in? What are the stories about your area? What are the activities that you like to do? And then we, with them, explore ways that they can celebrate and share that through creativity. So the arts sector, one of the things that we do is about exploring people just how broad the arts can be, because often people do think, oh, it's drawing, it's going to a gallery, it's going to a theatre, and maybe if you don't really enjoy those kind of experiences, you think, oh no, the arts isn't for me. But the arts is incredibly broad. There's lots of different things there, and I think a lot of people maybe just haven't discovered the bit that they enjoy, and everybody's got a little creative bone in them somewhere. We can always find it.
I mean, you mentioned in that consortium one or two names that I've not heard of before. Metal, I think you said.
So Metal are, again, another local arts organisation. They're based in Chauffeur's Cottage, which is just behind the town hall, and they focus on supporting and developing artists, but they also do a lot of projects within the community as well. They've been in the city for about 6 years.
Oh gosh, good.
But
Wonderful.
You'll have to have them on.
And you're supported or funded by the Arts Council?
We are. So we're funded by a strand called Creative People and Places. So we're one of 30 projects across the UK that all have the same aim to work with people who don't normally participate to explore what they're interested in. And then all of the projects that we are doing is just lots of learning, lots of evaluation that we can then feed back to other organisations and say, if you want to involve more people in the arts and in your projects, this is the kind of stuff you need to do. This is what they're interested in.
Right. Well, now last month we had a great conversation with Sheena Carman from Vivacity, but why are there two organisations that both dealing with creative, artistic stuff?
Well, there's no limit to how many organisations you can have. I mean, the more arts, the better, because there's so many things people are interested in. I mean, within Vivacity manage the culture and leisure services, and there's certain facilities attached to that. So a lot of Sheena's work is around those different buildings, whereas our programme we are about the community. So we use the phrase "great art on your doorstep." So we don't do stuff in arts venues. We do things like today we're in the Iqbal Centre on Cromwell Road, so we do those kind of projects out in the community, right where people are living and working.
So let's come to this. You've got a big event starting off at 6 o'clock here at the Iqbal Centre, and it's all to do with the Millfield Link, a community arts project. Tell me more.
Well, we've got some funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund. It's a partnership with us and Community First and Gladstone Connect and the Archive Services. And part of the project is to restore the Link Road mural. So it's an amazing landmark in the area. It was painted nearly 40 years ago and it's very faded. So part of the project is working with local artists to restore the mural. But alongside that, we want to have a programme of talking to people who've lived in the area over the 40 years about their experiences of living in this part of the city and how it has changed, and looking at that history. And doing that in a very creative way. So we're going to do workshops around like filmmaking, like using your mobile phone to make films, interviewing, photography, collage, and kind of with lots of different ages, and just get ways to people talk about how they feel about this place, how it's their home, how it was their home, and then use that to create an exhibition that really kind of celebrates and shares and explores this part of the city.
So it's not just tonight then? It's
tonight is a launch, because the first thing we need to do is we need to get people in the area knowing about the project and coming and talking to us. So we want to recruit volunteers who we're calling them community collectors, who might work with us. And it might be that they just go and sit and chat to their grandparents or their family or some of their colleagues and friends and just collect their experiences. And they might be able to tell us about, there was this event that happened, on the Cromwell Road in 1992 and you should really look into this, and give us those prompts so we can start looking at what are the interesting stories and things that happened in this area that we can collect and make sure they're stored for future generations.
Now that mural, it's fantastic. It was a really great piece of art. Yes, it's faded a lot over the years, but do you know the history, how it came to be painted in the first place?
It was commissioned by the Peterborough Development Corporation. And it was painted by an artist called Francis Gamilla, who was working with them at the time. There was 2 murals that were painted. The other one, the building was demolished, and this one has just stayed there. So the Development Corporation commissioned a lot of different public art within the city. So the Caro sculpture that's outside the Key Theatre was commissioned by the Development Corporation. A lot of the arts that are down the Anthony Gormley's in Cathedral Square, and this is another one of those pieces, but it's not remembered in the same way. But it actually, I think, fills a special place in the heart of local residents in the way that maybe some of those don't, because it's it features people who were living here at the time, and we've spoken to people who are in the mural who everyone knows who they are, and it's like, that's that guy, he's been on a wall for nearly 40 years as a piece of art. That's a really interesting story and experience to explore.
So they're still living around here?
Yeah. So some of the people we know who they are, and some of them we don't. And so again, one of the aims of the project is, can we find those people? We were looking at a photo earlier of an elderly lady who's in the mural, and we think, I wonder if her family know that she's on that wall, that she's there. Gosh. And that would be for her great grandchildren to come and go, look she's on this wall here.
Can you remember how many people there are on the picture?
I don't know. I think there's about 10.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure, because some of them are so faded you can't really see them. So some of them you can't quite see the faces. Sure. I mean, I saw original photo of it, and I'd seen the mural lots of times, but there's an amazing flowers running through it that are so faded. I didn't even realise that was in there, and it's amazing the colour that was in the original piece. It will look incredible when it's redone.
Now, is this going to be an authentic reproduction of the original, or is there going to be some addition, or maybe
there won't be any addition to it, as it's Heritage Lottery funding, so it is a restoration. The likelihood is that we probably won't be able to, it's not going to be a case of taking it right back to perfection. Obviously the render has aged, but to do as much as we can so that it will survive for another 40 years. So we will be colour matching, we will be following the lines, so it should look as much as it does like the original one. But no, we won't be. We did have a discussion about, and Francis, the artist who painted it, talked about, do you show that the passing of time, do you change the people within it? And we were like, that sounds exciting, but also for people who really love it, we think, do we want to change it? And I think just repairing it, adding back the colour is what we're looking at doing at the moment.
I mean, I think it's a great way of using what is potentially a concrete jungle to give us something that catches the eye, lifts the face upwards and says, wow, there's something about the spirit that.
Well, one of the people in the picture, that's what he's doing. He's kind of, we've got his cutout here in the room here. He's kind of carrying a carrier bag, and he is kind of like, because in the mural there's a rainbow kind of through the sky that's caused these flowers to grow up, and the people are there.
Okay.
Francis told us this. The people are there, kind of going, oh wow, look at that, these flowers suddenly bursting out of the ground. And so they are kind of doing that moment of wow. And I do think that we're interested as an arts programme in looking at, should there be more of these kind of works in this part of town?
Yeah.
And we want to explore that with residents. Would they like to see more of this? And if they would, what are the kind of images and pictures that they would like to see? Because Peterborough has some incredibly talented street artists who work outdoor in this kind of scale, and it would be great to kind of look at how, could they come and do more things in this part of the city, and what would that look like if that was right for the community?
Wow. And I mean, practically in the environment, there's been some real improvements going on in this area. Growing communities, and the patches of abandoned land, between the road and the pavement, where there's a patch of dead grass and weeds and rubbish and needles and cigarette ends, and they've all been tidied up and replanted. Some of them are edibles, some of them are perennials, and local people are now taking care of them.
Yeah, I think that it does make that real difference when people see that you care, and people kind of get in behind that, and and it's celebrating that community spirit that's in the area by giving people opportunities to participate in those kind of things.
So we've got live growing communities with the planting, and now we've got the potential for more pictures to come, and ideas for the way in which art can lift our spirits and make this a community that feels proud of living here and wanting to look after and care for it. Yeah. What's actually happening here tonight in the Iqbal Centre at 6 o'clock?
It's our launch event, so we've just invited lots of different people, but anyone's welcome to come along. So we've kind of, anyone living in the area to just come along and find out what the project's all about. So we've got some soft drinks, we've got some nibbles, and it's just, I will give a little talk about what the project's all about. There's some activities that people can join in with, there's some pictures that people can look at and just get an idea of what we're trying to do and think about how they might want to be involved.
And from then, is there a programme that people will know where to come and what to see?
Yeah, well, we have, I've had made, they're here tonight, I've got cardboard cutouts of 6 of the figures from the mural, and they're like freestanding, and they actually have little leaflet dispensers that are attached to them. They haven't been attached yet, but they will kind of go on tour around the area. So whenever we've got workshops and activities coming up, we'll be promoting them through these individuals who will be in some of the different shops and places in the area. So we will kind of be sharing. So the first thing we'll be doing is just some informal kind of coffee mornings for people who might want to volunteer with us and help us kind of collect those stories to come along and find out about what might be involved in that.
Right, gosh. And is the whole thing got the overarching title of Millfield Link?
The Millfield Link, because the mural is on the Link Road.
Well,
so we were like, the murals, because people call it's the Link Road mural.
Okay.
And then, of course, we're talking about people's relationships to this area and how the area changed. So that's how we came up with that name.
Yeah, wow, great. Tremendous. Can't wait.
Yeah, should be good.
I mean, I've seen the very faded mural, and I think when I first saw it, I thought that it was on its way out.
Yeah, it will be if it's not. I mean, and this is why Heritage Lottery gave us the funding, because when you look at the pictures and really scrutinise it, it's it hasn't got long until it will be so faded you won't be able to follow the lines. At the moment, our artists will be able to repaint and follow the lines as much as possible. So
and the back, it's painted onto what, concrete?
It's on render, so that will need to be touched up as well.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so again, this is what I mean about it won't, I don't think it's possible because to take it back to perfection without taking the render off, in which case you're starting from scratch. So it's a case of we can fix and repair the render in certain areas, and then we will just kind of repaint onto it, and then we will also put a coating on top that will hopefully help it last longer as well.
Do you know how long it'll take?
I don't actually. So that's kind of one of the challenges, is because it's following those lines. We'll have to be quite precise. So I imagine it will. I think originally it took about a month to paint, so potentially around the same again.
Yeah, it's such painstaking work, but really talented and skilled artists to do that.
Yeah, but we have them, and it will all be local artists, people in Peterborough, some of whom have grown up in this area, really love the mural. So it will be local talent doing that work.
Well, I hope it attracts people to think, I'm walking down Cromwell Road, I'll just take a turn off down Link Road and see how far it's gone.
Yeah, hopefully.
and see the development going on.
Well, it's a local landmark, and hopefully people will come and have a look at it. And and it's just across the road from the mosque as well, which is another amazing building to go and go and visit and be around. So it's a really these different assets in the area. You have 62 Gladstone, which is a small art gallery again up the road. So there's this little cluster of wonderful places for people to come and have a look at if they just know about it and come and explore this part of the city.
Do you know, I haven't made my way to 62 Gladstone Street yet.
Well, you should. So I think it's open most Saturdays.
Okay.
Yeah, pop down and have a look.
What will I see when I go there?
At the moment, there's a photography exhibition of, again, I think it's local residents, so you can go in and have a look at that. I think it's changing soon. It's going to have a new project, a new exhibition coming in soon. I can't remember the name of the artist.
Okay.
But if you go in now, you can kind of see the one that's there, and then there's another one coming up soon.
Wow, this feels the go-to place in Peterborough.
Exactly. It's all going on in Millfield.
Wonderful. Now, you also said that there's a Millfield Festival coming up.
Oh no, we've just had that. It was in August.
Okay.
So that was the third one. So again, we started a festival 3 years ago on the park at the Triangle. Yeah. And so we've just had the third one at the beginning of August. Right. The year before it rained, which is quite disappointing when you do all that work and it rains. But this year it was glorious sunshine. It was a really, really lovely event. And for that one, we have meetings every 6 weeks. We'll be doing it again for next year. So we have meetings every 6 weeks. And anyone who wants to get involved can come along. So all of the organisation and the programming we do with local residents who get to kind of, talk to us about the kind of things they'd like to see. And then we have, local residents and organisations running activities as part of the day as well. So it's very much about celebrating the whole community and bringing the whole community together rather than us just flying in a festival and plonking it down.
Sure. And I think that something special about that festival is that it's about all communities rather than a particular festival.
Yeah.
And I know, and it's really great, for example, the Italian community or the Latvian community celebrate their own particular heritage and they make it open to others, and that's good. But the possibility that communities can come together and you can have a stall from each type of culture, each type of nationality, and people will mix and understand and learn from one another.
Yeah, I mean, when we programme the Millfield Festival, we don't necessarily think of trying to represent all the different groups. It's more about making sure that nothing we do excludes anybody.
Right.
So we kind of, when we're going through the programme, we think, is there any reason why having that in the programme might stop a particular person not wanting to participate? So it's a very family-friendly festival. We don't have a bar and sell alcohol because, again, that would stop some people from coming to the festival. So, yeah, it's about, making sure. But, again, we do have, we had a group this year called Spirits, which from Latvian choir. So we do try and showcase those different cultures within the area as well.
Gosh. And has it grown over the 3 years, do you think? Have there been more people involved?
I think definitely more people this year because it didn't rain. So last year there've always been lots of people involved. It's always been Millfield for us. We work in different parts of the city, and Millfield's always been a great place to work because there's so many different community organisations who are so passionate about what they're doing and want to get involved. So we've had, at the festival we had lots of different stalls, and that again, that's local organisations who really want to turn up and chat to people and share what they're doing. So from that, I think that bit will continue to grow, and I think the audiences, if the weather's good, I think the audiences will as well.
Now, if there's somebody listening who hasn't yet connected with the Millfield Festival, and you mentioned you meet every 6 weeks to plan, and the next one will be next August.
Next festival, yes. August.
So, but if they want to show an interest and find out more and get involved, who do they contact? They
can contact me. So they go to. So we have a website which is peterborough.org, or we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So you can kind of contact us for any of those different things, and contact myself or any of the team, and just say you're interested in getting involved. And for all of our events, we create Facebook events, so we can post them. So if you use social media, you can have a look at that. And we also share everything. There's a really good website called We Love Peterborough, which promotes lots of different, not just arts, lots of different activity and places and things to do within the city. And they also have a Facebook page, which is a really good listings if you're looking for like a one-stop shop where to go and find out what's going on in Peterborough this weekend. The We Love Peterborough website is a really good one to look at. We put all of our stuff on there as well, and you can good menu of different things that are happening.
Well, we'll certainly carry that on Salam's own social media and link to your pages and so on. But I mean, even just Googling Peterborough Presents is going to
you'll find us that way as well.
A link and find you that way. What else do Peterborough Presents get involved with?
We have actually got a project coming up with Salam Radio called Radio Local. So it's working with some artists called Hunt and Darton. So several years ago, there was a pop-up cafe on Bridge Street in town, which was run by Hunt and Darton. If you went there, you would have had a very interesting experience. It was kind of like a performance. It was very funny, kind of performances as part of your visit to the cafe. And they're coming back to the city. So with Radio Local, it's a tour that they've taken around the UK. And in each area, they work with a local community radio station. So in Peterborough, it's Salam. And they commission new content for the radio programme. And then they will do a 12-hour takeover. And so for the Radio Local in Peterborough, they will be live broadcasting through Salam Radio from the Lincoln Road at the end of October. And in the run up to that, there will be workshops. So if anyone's ever thought they'd like to be in your seat and be on the radio, they can come along to some of these workshops and find out about how to create things for radio and think about the things they'd like to talk about and be part of this live broadcast. So it's kind of a live broadcast for anyone to listen to, but also a live performance that people can come along and watch. So that's something that we've got coming up as well.
And how do people get involved in that? Again,
probably through me.
Presents.
Just come to Peterborough Presents. There's only a small team, so there's myself and 3 other members of staff. So there's Keely, Katie, and Charlie, and myself. So and we all know what everybody else is doing. So you can just kind of get in contact, and we can let you know what opportunities there are if you're just interested in finding out more.
Gosh, and it doesn't mean you're going to be on your own and trying to broadcast live and.
No, not at all. I mean, and the project is fun. It's supposed to be fun. So people will come along and it's up to them how they will participate and engage with it. And they might want to come along to the workshop and find out about it, but not be part of the live broadcast. So we're not going to force anybody to do anything. So it's up to people how they want to take part. But if they've ever thought, I'd love to have a little go on the radio, this would be an opportunity for them to do that.
In a fun and safe way.
Yeah, in a fun and safe way, and and supported way as well.
It reminds me when I was teaching my daughters to start to learn to drive, and the first time they get behind the wheel, and there's so many things, and young people think, I know how to do this, and then suddenly you discover how you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And it's so complicated and difficult. And I felt the same when I first started broadcasting here, because we broadcast live on Salam Radio. There's no opportunity to say, well, we'll just stop there and re-record that bit.
Yeah.
We keep going. And it was scary, I tell you. But you get into it, and there's great training. And although each individual broadcaster is on their own with their own show, we're part of a team. We're part of a community itself, Salam Radio, which is across the communities of different people. So I commend your extra project. Remind me what it's called.
It's called Radio Local.
Radio Local.
Yeah.
Gosh. Okay.
So it should be good. It will be fun. It will be funny, definitely. And it's been all over. So they're in Manchester at the moment.
Oh, right.
So we're in good company.
Yeah. What else does Peterborough Presents get involved in?
What else? What other projects? We've got a project. We've been doing a project with Neem Park around barefoot walking. I don't know have you ever been barefoot walking, Adrian?
Oh, I'm afraid not.
No. So this is with a wonderful Peterborough artist called Sandra Keating, and she it's about encouraging people to experience your environment in a different way. There's a lot of research that shows that walking barefoot is really good for you. Sandra practices it every day. So we're running barefoot walks, which again just encourage people to take the shoes off. And people go to Ferry Meadows. I go to Ferry Meadows all the time, but to actually take your shoes off and experience it in a different way and think about how that makes you feel about your environment. So we've been doing that project with her. We've also got a project in Hampton which is around music making. We'll shortly be launching Tuesday night sessions for songwriters. So if you are a songwriter who wants to kind of work with people to share and develop your own music rather than performing covers, So we're going to be starting an opportunity for songwriters to come together and share their work and develop their work and kind of, increase their confidence to maybe go to an open mic and perform original material rather than doing a cover. So we've got that project coming up. And I mentioned We Love Peterborough
yes.
before, so we've been doing some work with them as well, trying to collect 1,000 moments. So we want to celebrate Peterborough, and it's a city that can sometimes be a bit down on itself, but it's got so many positives as well. And so the We Love Peterborough campaign, it's about getting people to share a particular time or place in which they really loved the city and felt this was a place that they really want to celebrate. So the aim is to collect 1,000 of these moments.
Wow.
And from that, we're kind of, again, it was just interesting to have a look at. It helps us to see, what are the kind of places or experiences that people are talking about, and what can we do artistically to explore that. So already a lot of the things that people are talking about are around things they do to relax. So escaping from the stress of everyday life, and relaxation is a big theme, so that's something for us to look at moving forward.
Josie, we're coming to the end of our time, but it's been fantastic. I'm becoming inspired to the arts and creativity.
Good.
And I'm going to look up Peterborough Presents
Doing my job.
See what more I can do. So that's all we have time for this half of the show. A big thank you to Josie Stone, Programme Director at Peterborough Presents, and the great news about the Millfield Link and the Millfield Festival. There's still time to come along to the Iqbal Centre here tonight at 6 o'clock to meet the local community and see more about the Millfield Link and the project and the creativity that will go with that. Do stay tuned to meet our next guest and learn more about Peterborough life and how people are working across the city to improve Peterborough for everyone.
You're listening to Salam Radio, and it's now time for Asr Azan. This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salam Radio.
Welcome back to Salam Radio on 106.2 FM and online at salamradio.co.uk. This is Adrian Holdstock presenting Community Matters, the radio show for all communities in Peterborough and beyond. My second guest tonight also joins me in the studio. She is someone who has opened my eyes and my heart to something very significant that has been happening here in Peterborough. Our welcome and care for Syrian refugees. My guest is Lynne Booker. Welcome, Lynne.
Hi, Adrian. Nice to be here.
Now, Lynne works for the Refugee Council as a psychological therapist. I'm sort of intrigued to ask quite what that is, but also what's your involvement with our Peterborough refugees and how did you come to be doing that work?
Okay. Well, I've worked in Peterborough for 10 years as a counsellor with the NHS, so working in GP practices all over Peterborough.
Yeah.
During that time, I had quite a lot of clients who were from Iraqi, Iranian, Albanian backgrounds, and got some experience of working with interpreters, which was very interesting. And I found that I really enjoyed working with refugee asylum-seeking clients.
Yeah.
Maybe part of that is a bit about my own background, because I'm sort of second generation Jewish. My grandparents were immigrants to this country.
Gosh.
And I think maybe have a little bit of affinity from that point of view with some of the refugees and asylum seekers. So funding came up through the NHS to work specifically with some of the Syrian refugees who've come over. My daughter sent me information about the job. She works with refugees and asylum seekers in London. Sent me the job, I applied and I got the job. So I've been doing that for a year now.
Wonderful. Okay. Now, accepting Syrian refugees was a government initiative. It goes back to the days of David Cameron, that we were across the whole country to take 20,000 into the United Kingdom by 2020. And each city was offered an opportunity to play its part. I think Peterborough may have taken a little bit of time to get going with this, but the key feature would be that these refugees would come from refugee camps rather than having to make their own way here as asylum seekers. I realise confidences must be kept, but is there something general you can tell us about the sort of experiences our refugee guests have had?
Well, I think perhaps fortunately very few of us can actually imagine the sort of experiences that they've had. But obviously the Syrian war, civil war has been going on since 2011, and anybody who watches the news will have seen the absolutely horrific scenes within Syria. 6 million people are internally displaced in Syria, and 5 million people have fled the country. So there are a lot of people who, for all sorts of different reasons, saw horrors, experienced horrors, and had to flee. Now, most of those people ended up in some kind of refugee accommodation. Sometimes it's refugee camps, sometimes it's within cities in the surrounding countries, so Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey. And there they are stuck, sometimes in the most appalling circumstances. And it's getting harder and harder. So the UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees, does what it can to make sure people have, shelter and water and food. Sometimes children can get into some sort of schooling again, some kind of medical care. But it's a pretty horrible places to be. And some of those people, are really very few, are chosen, we don't really know how or why, to come to the UK on this scheme that's called the Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme. So that's how they get here. So in Peterborough, we will have eventually 100 people. At the moment, it's just 12 families who've come.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean, I understand how those other Middle Eastern countries in the vicinity of Syria have opened their borders and opened their hearts to an extent to allow for these refugee camps. But now it's gone on for a few years. I think they're losing patience, and they're regarding the refugees that are living in their countries and amongst them as a bit of a burden.
Well, I don't know very much about this, but I just know that, for example, in Lebanon, people, the Syrian refugees, are having a very, very difficult time there.
Right.
So I don't think I can say much more about that.
No,
really.
Indeed. Let's come to what sort of welcome Peterborough has been able to give them.
Well, the welcome is a really good care package. Whichever cities, wherever people are housed or homed, they have the same kind of care package. So people are given 5 years refugee status. So they're not coming as asylum seekers. They're coming. They know they can stay here. 5 years refugee status, and hopefully be able to have settled status after that. In Peterborough, Peterborough Asylum Refugee Community Association does the resettlement work, so they do the meet and greet at the airport, take people to their houses and so on. The housing, I understand that the housing was all houses that would have been empty otherwise, and Kingsgate Church, the care zone at Kingsgate, does all the furnishing of the houses. So they have a nice home. They come to a nice furnished house with a full fridge to start them off. And they have exactly the same rights as anybody else: universal credit, free NHS care, education, and also they have English language training for the first couple of years, quite intensive English lessons at City College. The Muslim community obviously is very welcoming, and everybody can find a mosque, and they know where to get some their halal food. Right. So it's a good place. Peterborough is a very good place for people to come to.
And just to get the welcome and the provision of resources into perspective, this is national government funded.
That's correct.
So
yes.
we're not taking opportunity away from local people for housing.
That's right.
Or other support.
That's right. And the NHS, for my role, for example, the NHS gets extra funding for people's well-being. So although the job is called psychological therapist, it's really about general well-being, with the hope that people won't end up a couple of years down the line needing even more mental health support from the NHS.
Indeed. But what sort of challenges are these families and generally Syrian refugees facing when they come here?
Well, to some degree, it's exactly the same challenges as we all face. So sort of finding our way through the paperwork and the bureaucracy of just normal life, which we all find difficult. But if you imagine trying to do that when you don't speak English, or you don't speak very much English, can't read all these forms that arrive, can't find your way through GP appointments, and so on. Life is just very, very challenging from that point of view. People who come here want to work. They want to volunteer. They're very hardworking. They want to be busy, but it's hard when you don't speak English. It's tough.
Yeah.
So finding a role, I think, is a real challenge for people. Strange sort of cultural differences. Things that, for example. They're very used to being out and about in the evenings. Back home, it would have been when it's cool, lots of pavement cafes and markets and shops open, and that's where you'd go out and meet people and meet your friends. And they tend to say, well, where do you meet anybody? What do you do in the evenings? Everyone just shuts up shop and stays at home, and they really, really miss that sort of hustle and bustle of life. The Syrian people tended to live in very close to their families and friends in big family communities. They'd see each other every day, have coffee every day, pop into your sister, pop into your mum and your aunties and so on. And they really miss that desperately. Yeah. Just that sense of community that they had.
I imagine that they're being selected as individual family units to come here. Which means that they're leaving behind, maybe from that refugee camp, or maybe from, they might not even know where their wider family are left in Syria, but they're leaving those behind and becoming a small family unit, which to me, in a white British culture, we're very much, we live in small family units. But for an Asian culture which is used to living in much larger groups.
Yes, very much so. I don't think perhaps we can really grasp just what a loss that is. So there's the pain of, as you say, sometimes not even knowing where your family are. A lot of people just disappeared in Syria. And they don't know if they're alive or dead or in prison or where they are. So you can imagine what it must feel like to have your dad or your brother or your sister or your son or your daughter disappeared, and how that would affect you trying to settle down anywhere else. Absolute agony. I think some of the hardest stories I ever have to listen to are those kinds of things. Really, really, really painful. And then, as you say, just that loss of community, and we are a bit insular, aren't we? We tend to be in our, nuclear families, as you just say. They miss it.
I mean, I remember a great story. A few months ago, I was invited to go to Parker in Unity Hall, and they had a reception for all the people that they've been welcoming and looking after, including the more recently arrived Syrian families. And one or two families had come from another city to just join in. Yeah. And there were two sisters.
Yes.
That had not met and didn't know where each other were.
Oh, really?
And
how
there
amazing.
They were meeting.
Yes.
For the first time.
Yes. And some of the people in Peterborough have relatives who are elsewhere in the UK who've been brought to the UK but are in different cities or different areas. So
it's possible we can pick up the wrong messages from the media about the inability of asylum seekers and refugees, and I think some people don't really understand the difference between the two, but my point is this, that they come with no skills, they come with no abilities, they come looking for our support. But I think you found that we've got people amongst our families with great skills, whether intellectual or academic or professional or practical. What have...
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, people had a life before. They had a life working as a chef or bakers, training for the law, metal workers, farmers, drivers, just a huge range of different skills. And find it really, really frustrating not to be able to offer any of that when they get here. Really frustrating. that's a very, very big issue. Also, I mean, amongst some of the younger people, for example, there are singers, talented singers, dancers, musicians.
Yes.
And yeah, they absolutely love, for example, at Parker at the celebration, to be able to offer some of that. But for maybe particularly for the men, to be not employed is very difficult for them. They would really, really benefit from and really enjoy volunteering or workplace placement, something like that. It's really, really helpful. They don't like sitting around doing nothing at all. And I say the women perhaps tended, not all, but tended to be a little bit more home-based, and they've lost that sense of community that being at home used to be. So finding a new role, I think, is difficult.
And you mentioned intensive English teaching, and that's going to be really helpful for them to settle in and acclimatise. But I think it's more than the formal teaching.
Yes. I mean, there are quite a lot of people whose written English is quite good and can listen and understand quite a lot, but find it really hard to talk. So it's one thing sitting down in the classroom doing a written exercise. It's quite another having a conversation with your doctor or with your next door neighbour or with a stranger. And that's really the practice that people need, is friendly faces who will be patient, have a conversation with them, maybe find different ways of expressing things, not be put off if that conversation gets a bit awkward at times, but persist, just to give practice in speaking English.
Yes.
And
I remember seeing a great example of that up in Leeds, and they had a weekly gathering for people. Again, it was the combination of asylum seekers and refugees in a local church. They cooked them a meal, they had spare clothes and spare shopping that people could engage with. But above all, they had volunteers from the church and the wider community who would just come and sit round cafe tables and chat to people.
Yes.
Very informally. So this isn't English teaching, it was just English conversation.
Absolutely. And we've got 3 ladies who are friends of mine who are going to be starting volunteering quite soon, doing just that.
Right.
And it may be something that other people might like to do, might like to get involved in at Parker.
Yeah. And the route to becoming involved would be through Parker.
It's certainly one of the routes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Now, it's always useful to have other people's views who come to your place of welcome and say, are we welcoming? How do we live our lives? What do we look like to outsiders? So have you had any feedback from our Syrian refugee guests on what they think of Peterborough?
Well, I think one of the things that people said to me was the first time they came to the UK and they would include Peterborough is how green everything is.
Oh, right.
We perhaps, may or may not see Peterborough like that, but they find it incredibly green. They love the fact that there's trees and there's grass everywhere.
Yes.
They have a real love of gardens. I'm surprised how many people enjoy gardening. There's a couple of the families that have taken on allotments and got involved at the Green Backyard, and they love nurturing plants in their gardens. So they see us as a potentially a very green place, which is lovely. They are incredibly hospitable. It's a blessing and a difficulty that every single time I go to anybody's house, I am fed cakes and biscuits, usually homemade, and very sweet tea and coffee. And I love the hospitality.
Yeah.
And given half a chance, people will cook a full meal and simply present it to me. Wonderfully hospitable. I mean, there's cultural differences, but I find if I'm honest up front and just ask, what does that mean? I'll give you one little example. So every time I'm given a tray of coffee comes out, there is a single glass of water. on the tray.
Right.
So after some while, I thought, well, why is there one glass of water? Is this for me or what? So eventually I asked some of the ladies, why do you bring one glass of water? So they looked at each other and they said, well, why do we bring one glass of water? And then one of them said, well, I don't know, it's what my mother used to do. So you have to ask sometimes if you don't understand something.
What a wonderful story. How tradition
yes,
catches us out.
Yes. And things like, mostly I will take my shoes off as I go into a house. Most families prefer that. There's little things. But you have to ask, you have to learn, just as they have to ask and learn to get used to living here.
Now, when we were chatting before this show, I think they had a comment about the healthcare system that we have here, and how that's rather different from their experience.
Well, I understand that it is very different in that people are used to going to the doctor, and they would sort of spend a day there, and it was a kind of one-stop shop. So you'd go to the doctor and you would have everything done on that day.
Gosh.
So you'd go there, you'd have your x-rays, you'd have your chat with the doctor, you'd have your prescription, you'd have your massage or your physiotherapy. You come out and you really feel that you've been sorted out. You've had kind of everything's been done that can be done, and it all happened in the same day. Whereas, of course, our system is completely different. You go to the GP. You have a month or two of sort of watchful waiting, and then you might get referral for one particular part of your body, and that might take 6 months to come through. And then once that sort of trail is ended, you get a referral for a different thing. I think people, probably not just as Syrian people, but find it very difficult to understand how our system works. There's also, of course, the language problem, and for example, if GPs use interpreters on language line, it might be a kind of Arabic that some people can't understand. So it's not always easy. Communication is not always easy, and I find quite a lot of my work is helping people to communicate with their GPs, and perhaps helping the GPs to sort of see them as a whole person, not just a set of symptoms.
Now, I'm a school governor, and we have in a primary school amazing children from so many different nationalities that just pick up English so very quickly. Are there children, school-age children with these families?
Yes, the families all have children. And as you say, the little ones, the younger ones pick up English very, very quickly indeed. And it can be a problem that they end up interpreting for their parents, which is not ideal in many situations. You don't really want the children to be interpreting for the parents, but it does happen. The kids are wonderful and very joyful. Parents have often gone through hell to get their kids here and get them back into school. So some of the children have been out of school for some years, and so they've got both English to learn and catching up, which is tough. But the families all set enormous store by schooling and good education. They see that as the way their children are going to settle and get on.
And 5 years is a good time for people to put down roots and establish themselves. And hopefully, they would have the choice. It would be wonderful to see Syria as a peaceful, prosperous country again. And some people may say, that's where I want to go back to, that's my homeland. But for other people to say, I've made England, Scotland, Britain my home now, and I want to contribute to the social life and the economy here.
Yes, I mean, to be honest, when I speak to people, there is nobody seeing Syria as a safe place at the moment.
Surely.
I think that's quite a long way off. Although one can hope and pray that that will happen. It's hard. It's really hard uprooting yourself from somewhere that you love, and You know, when people describe their life in Syria before the war, it was a really good life. You know, it was a really good life. And I don't think you can sort of underestimate the difficulty of settling in with such bizarre weather as well.
Yes.
Knowing what to wear when you go out.
Yes, indeed.
But yes, I think people want to contribute. They definitely, you know, they want to contribute. They want to be safe. They love the fact that it's safe and it's peaceful here, and that the law is equal to everybody. But it's still hard. Settling down in a strange place is hard.
Must be. A final thought. We talked about people wanting to volunteer, and they could apply to Parker as one way in which they could get involved in English conversation. But what could people in business, employers, do to support and help our refugees?
Well, as I say, there is a need for what I might call sympathetic work placements. So a chance for perhaps people to come along, show their skills, share their skills, and see if there's a role, a place that they might fit in. I understand that, for example, in Norway, refugees are very quickly brought into the workplace. So whatever their previous work was, whatever the skills they had, they're quite quickly integrated into some work, and they learn their English on the job, which of course gives enormous motivation, and in some ways is much easier. So anybody out there that thinks they might like to offer some kind of work placement, that would be very welcome, or volunteer placement, very welcome. Another thing people can do is on the Refugee Council website, there's a petition that you can sign, which is about family reunification, asking that the government will bring in more people. And that's something, if you'd like to have a look on the Refugee Council website and sign up, that would be great as well.
That's really good to know. Important to know. We'll carry information on our Salam Radio social media about that. This show can be watched again on YouTube and Salam Radio. But we've come to the end of the show. Lynne Booker, on behalf of the Syrian refugees and your own work, thank you so very much for joining me tonight.
Adrian. Thank you.
And good night to all our listeners. The peace of God to you all.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
The masjid is a center of spirituality, education, and a social hub for the community. In the times of the Blessed Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, the masjid lay at the heart of society and was not just a place of sanctuary and prayer, but also a thriving educational institution.